Hola a todos. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Human Traces 2024 webinar series. It's a pleasure for me to introduce today's speakers, Paula Echevarria Galindo and Cecilia Rayo. Paula and Ceci will be sharing with us the results of a study that started over 1.5 years ago during a workshop of human traces in the context of the IAL IPA 2022 meeting Bariloche in Argentina. And I'm going to give a bit of information about Paula and Ceci. Paula Echevarria Galindo is a geoscientist from Guatemala, currently holding a PhD in Braunschweig in Germany. Her research focuses in the study of aquatic bioindicators from lake sediments to reconstruct hydrological, environmental, and climate changes in lakes located in the Neotropics and the Tibetan Plateau. Cecilia Rayo is an Argentinian biologist. She's a PhD student from Mar del Plata, Argentina, and her research involves cyanobacteria and chlorophyta algae to characterize phytoplankton and periphyton of aquatic ecosystems. Cecilia is currently involved in projects in Pampas and Patagonia, Argentina. Now I'm going to let Paula and Ceci introduce the topic of this talk. You can start whenever you want.
Well, good morning, everyone. We'll be doing a little review of what is about our work in progress. The Anthropocene has been postulated as an area of rapid environmental changes associated with the human impact in the early systems. This impact under a climatic global change scenario includes several processes such as the alteration of the water and biogeochemical cycles, a worsening on water quality, a generalized landscape transformation, and the land use and climate change. This background motivated us during the IALIPA meeting held in Bariloche, Argentina in November 2022, as Julieta said. This discussed the associated Latin America perspective in the context of Human Traces Group workshop. The purpose of the workshop was to focus on the long legacy of pre-Anthropocene human impacts, aiming to address the knowledge gap about spatial and temporal variations in early human impacts, with the overarching goal to create a global synthesis of human traces in geological archives. Then an interdisciplinary scientific group representing Latin America joined. Our group has worked to compile the relevant currently paleolimnological data based on publications, most published between 2000 and 2022, in order to organize the data according to previously established criteria. Why Latin America? Well, Latin America was the last continent to be colonized by humans, with rapid expansion on each continent beyond within few millennia. The ecological diversity of the American subcontinent allows exploring its relationship within the long-term human occupation in the Americas, providing a unique context for paleolimnological studies. The existence of the high variability between and within ecoregions of Latin America in terms of biogeography, ecology, demography, land use history, and altitudinal and latitudinal climate variability. No previous review has taken into account the vast spatial variability of climate and environmental conditions in the continent. There is a need for integration of the different proxy sensitivity to human traces and human activity information currently published. The state of paleolimnology article published on the Journal of Paleolimnology showed a low frequency of paleolimnology records in the area, even though we found that there are more than we expected. So our work aims to establish different manifestations of human traces and their spatiotemporal variability in sediment records, mainly lacustrine, of Latin America. The specific objectives we set are to establish the onset of human traces in sedimentary archives through literature review, to identify commonalities and differences in key regions like Mesoamerica, Andes, Amazonia, Patagonia, Pampas, and southeastern Brazil, and to propose a methodological framework of associations among proxies, human traces, and human activities to further understand the deep past human legacy in Latin American ecoregions. We included 256 peer-reviewed studies corresponding to 314 sedimentary archives in Latin America and extracted the data considering the analysis of the proxies, the first appearance of human traces, and inferred the associated human activity. The figure below shows an example of the latter. If CMI's pollen grains were found in the pollen record, the inferred human activity was agriculture. The review of these publications meant the organization of the data in a master table, which include the most relevant and common fields to the most publications reviewed. The categorization of the fields was adjusted under criteria shared among the group, such as there's a total of 26 relevant proxies, where included 15 are biological, like pollen and non-pollen palynomorphs, charcoal, and there are 8 non-biological proxies, like heavy metals, for example. 13 human activities were linked to these proxies, to mention as an example, agricultural, logging, and agroforestry, and agropastoralism. And 9 traces left by these activities were considered. For example, vegetation changes, exotic taxa, land opening, or fires. The frequency plot were used to observe the distribution of these data, and non-metric multidimensional scaling analysis was carried out to explore the spatiotemporal variations of proxies, human traces, and human activities. The map on the left shows the first approach to the spatial arrangement of the data, according to which the reviewed publications were grouped into mainly 5 ecoregions: Mesoamerica, Andes, Amazonia, Pampas, and Patagonia. But the review of more publications from Brazil that were recently added led us to establishing one more region, given the difference between Amazonia and the rest of the country. We call it southeastern Brazil. The regions with few records weren't taken into account for this analysis. In the last few weeks, a different spatial criteria was considered based on ArcheoGlobe. ArcheoGlobe is a massively collaborative project to assess archaeological knowledge on human land use across the globe over the last 10,000 years. This database identified 14 ecoregions corresponding to Latin America. This public access source of data based on historical land use changes was used as a tool to contextualize land use history with onset of human traces from paleolimnology. This meant updating the original regions established to the new classification according to ArcheoGlobe. So the updated regions used for this analysis are Mesoamerica, Pampas, Amazonia, Andes, Southern Brazil, Galapagos, Patagonia, and South Pacific. Dale.
Thank you, Ceci. So now I'm going to show you the results. So starting with this very first overview of our records, using the map at the left, the different numbers of the study that we included in our analysis. And as you can see, Mesoamerica, together with Andes and Brazil, are the ones that has the highest number of studies that we included. Like in the other side, we have, for example, only one study for South Pacific and Galapagos. And that's why you will see later on that we did not include these two regions for further analysis, but we wanted to mention here. So you see how it's like the overview across Latin America and how many studies we included. Interesting also to note is that Mesoamerica, together with Andes and Brazil, are the ones that has the oldest first human trace recorded. And in the opposite, Pampas is the one that has the youngest. If you look at the plot at the bottom right of your screen, you see an illustration that shows the density with the median first human trace across all these ecoregions. So you can see the variations in the human presence across all Latin America. And we are going to discuss this a little bit later on. This is the first approach, Ceci was mentioned. We start looking at the specific proxies per region. So here we are showing these 6 ecoregions that we included. In general, pollen, charcoal, and geochemistry are the proxies that are mainly used across Latin America. However, proxies like DNA or more modern tools, like also trace elements, heavy metals, alkynes, or pigments are less used across these regions. Mesoamerica is the one that has the highest number of proxies used, and this might be also because we have more studies from this area. Also, it might give us also the hint that there are some more inaccessible places in Southern America to go and study and use different approaches or different proxies. The same analysis, like the same figures showing the frequency of proxies we did for human traces and human activity. So here I'm just going to show you an example for Patagonia. We see the frequency of the different proxies that we use in this region. Pollen is the one that is higher abundance recorded in the studies. And this proxy is always related or sometimes related with land opening. And therefore, the human activity is agriculture. Just let me move this here so I can see it better. In contrast, I have another example. For example, Pampas, where the proxy that is mostly used in our studies is geochemistry. And we then infer the human trace as eutrophication. So this is going to be the mostly human trace explained in the studies in this region. And what we infer is, again, agriculture. So with this, we can also see that the same human activity like agriculture here in Pampas and also in Patagonia comes from different uses of different proxies and different human traces. So once again, across Latin America, we have different human activities and human traces that we can record. To combine our approach with not only ecoregions, but the archeoglobe regions, we see this map where we are showing the first human trace. You can see the bigger the circle is, the oldest human trace is recorded. And in orange, you see like the oldest one. So once again, Mesoamerica, or what we were calling Mesoamerica at the beginning, here we have a more specific area that corresponds to southern Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and El Salvador as the oldest one. So around 13,000 calibrated years. Compared to other regions that has a youngest human trace. So basically it's another overview of how all our data is showing across Latin America, but now with the lens of the archaeological sites. So to go more into detail in this, we use the same approach of the 14 regions of archeoglobe, and we did a non-metrical multidimensional scaling analysis to assess this spatio-temporal variation. So in this first plot we are showing the different regions and the different ages of the first human trace. So again, the bigger the circle is oldest human trace recorded. And this is very nice when you compare it or when you are combining this other plot where we are showing the interactions between the proxies, the human trace, and the human activity. So I will give you an example. Here we have again the biggest circles at the left corresponding to, for example, southern Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, the Brazilian highlands. So areas where we have a oldest human trace. And this is really related with, for example, the proxies that we saw before in the frequency plots, where pollen, charcoal, fire proxies and non-pollen palynomorphs were used. And this, again, associated with land opening, the introduction of exotic taxa, the vegetation change, fires, and all this, again, related or associated to the human activity like agriculture, agropastoralism, or warfare also. To give you another example of maybe regions that has a youngest age or first human trace age, we have, for example, areas related with mining. So proxies mostly used in this area are trace elements and heavy metals, which are related to the metal pollution, and therefore the association to the human activity like metallurgy, fossil fuels, industry, and mining. And makes total sense that we have lower first human traces here, which are related to these human activities. So here we are showing again like frequency plots that the similar to the ones that I showed before, but here we have it showing or using the 14 regions of the archeoglobe. Basically the same. If we have a closer look, for example, here for northern Andes mountains and southern Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, something that we were calling before Mesoamerica, we see again the proxies that are mostly used are pollen, charcoal, and fire, and then the human trace corresponds to land opening, vegetation change and the human activity, again, agriculture or agropastoralism. And here we see the combination of these two maps. So at the top, let's say, you will see the circles that corresponds to our first ecoregions. And then under that, you see the 14 archeoglobe regions. And therefore, this is like just an example of how our data can complement or how more into details we can go by using archeoglobe more specific to the archaeological sites from each region and trying to reconstruct the history to more specific areas. As you can imagine, we have different challenges and limitations to organize and analyze all these data. First of all, difficulties in the data collection, the challenge of the interpretation and going from a proxy and then human trace and then human activity. And something that I, for sure, everyone's know here, it's the uncalibrated ages. So that's a very important point that we start with all of the records that we included here to be sure that the dates are correct and could and can be calibrated. Also, we are aware this is not a systematic review, so we are very well know that we might be underestimating certain regions and also the interpretation between proxies and human trace, human activities associations. This is like the overview, and it's going to already giving us the basis to explore more the ecological trajectories in the context of human activities and to try to understand how human actions have shaped and will continue shape our environments. And with this, we would like to acknowledge Pages and the Human Traces Group, and thank you everyone that attend to this webinar, also the invitation. And we will also like to give you an invitation to follow this QR code, where if you are interested, you can check all the data that we collected and that were used in this analysis. So we have the list, the papers and studies that we included. And of course, we invite you to ask questions, or if you also want to reach out by Gmail, you can write to this account for further questions. Thank you very much once again.
Well, thanks both for this wonderful presentation that nicely synthesized the work done regarding the early human traces in Latin America.